Welcome, everybody, to People, Their Passion and Purpose. I am so excited today to be with Amanda Spiro. Amanda has a really beautiful story. We know each other for quite some time, like actually many years, and we are connected in so many beautiful ways. But maybe we'll talk about that another time because right now there's so much to talk about. But the world of beauty and the world of spiritualism and even family now, actually. So, yeah. So, Amanda, I'm not going to introduce you more than that. I think what I want to um, get you, starting to talk about your life is really about how things changed and when your passion and purpose changed in your life and you made a big transformation. And I want to hear about, before and then, after and during and after. So go ahead. I know you talk about this a lot with other people, and I feel very fortunate and privileged to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
It's so nice to be interviewed by you because often I'm speaking to a complete stranger. So it's nice to
Uh,
have a natural conversation with a friend. So a little bit about myself.
yeah.
I am now a religious woman, a Hasidic Chabad Lubavitcher, and I'll tell you all about it and all about that journey. But I did not grow up religious at all. And throughout my life, I always say I had a wonderful life and I'm so grateful. And I was really blessed to have so many friends, travel the world, go to great schools, great camps, luxurious family vacations. But from such a young age, I always felt like something was missing in my life. And I feel like from the youngest age, I was on this journey of discovery. I always read so many different books. I was always trying to tap in whatever way I can to really find like, what is the purpose? I never felt like anyone knew what was going on. And I always felt like there has to be more to life than what I was experiencing. So that was a little bit of my background. I was a very anxious child, not having these answers, not knowing what's going on. And then when I was 17 years old, my best friend was killed in a car accident. I'm sure you remember Jackie Linetsky. She was a celebrity. She was on the front page of the People magazine. It was very, very tragic. It was very difficult. And at that time, I completely shut off. Socially, like school, I just was in my own little bubble at the time and really, really going inwards. And that was probably the most difficult time in my life. And at the time, I was seeking lots of professional help. Therapists, psychologists, social workers, guidance counselors, and no one even scratched the surface of what had occurred. I was really, really searching for answers and they were nowhere to be found. And it was very, very unsettling. So fast forward a couple years later, or even that year, that summer, I went on birthright to Israel for the first time in my life. And I didn't know much about Israel because I didn't go to a Jewish school. So it was all very foreign to me. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew that anyone that went on this trip had the most unbelievable time. And so I went. In the end, I ended up going all on my own. None of my friends were with me. It was a little bit of a mistake, but it ended up being the best thing for me because I was just able to be me and not, be distracted by my friends and everything like that. And I had a really amazing trip. It was very emotional for me, just being in Israel and connecting to the land and hearing so much about it. And also on that trip, the two leaders happened to be Shomer Shabbos. They observed the Sabbath, and I just really connected with them. I never in my life knew anyone religious, and I really enjoyed just being in their presence and, taking advantage of their time and asking them so many different questions. And I think since she passed away, that was the first time that I had like a little bit of healing, a little bit of answers. And then fast forward the year later, I went on the March of Living, which of course is a very intense trip. And on this trip, I met Penny Ganevish, who was the spiritual guide and who was the advisor on the bus. And I opened up to him. I really opened up my heart and I shared with him everything I was going through. At this point, I was still really in deep grief. I was kind of just pushing myself every single day to just show up. You have a question for me?
March of the Living. Not everybody that.
Okay, so I'm going to
Yeah.
explain what March of the Living is. So the March of the Living is a trip where you go to Poland for a week and you visit all the concentration camps and you learn all about the Holocaust. And they even bring survivors on the trip, as well as rabbis and spiritual leaders. And then afterwards, you go to Israel for a week. So it's a very
You do that
intense
in
training.
grade 10, and so you're
So usually, actually, you do that in grade 11.
11.
I didn't go in grade 11. I went when I was 18 years old.
Okay.
It was the first year that they had a young adult delegation trip.
Okay. I just wanted to clear that up for people who know about
Yes,
it and who don't know about it. So,
yes, yes.
okay.
Good that you
So,
did.
okay. See, I didn't know all this
So,
about you. So it's gonna,
yeah, I'm telling you all the things you don't know. Otherwise, it will be a
yeah.
conversation. I
Yeah.
want this to be real. So on the march, connected with this rabbi, shared with him everything I was experiencing. And for the very first time in a couple years, whatever he said just really resonated with me and it just calmed my soul. And at that moment, I remember thinking like, wow, if I thought of life like this rabbi, life would be so much easier because I really felt as much as I had everything as a young girl, everything, I still felt like life was so hard despite all that. And he just seemed to have all the answers. He had such clarity and such confidence, and he was like a ball of fire and energy, and he was just such a good energy to be around. And I really connected with him and all his teachings. And I always say, like, it was like an Oprah aha moment for me, where I was like, ah, life isn't so scary, overwhelming. And basically, after the trip, I met his entire family. I became a regular guest at their Shabbos table. And every time I was there, I'd always learn something new about Judaism. And I just started becoming more interested in Judaism and all of its teachings. And then fast forward, I'm giving you my story in a nutshell, otherwise we'll be here for days. But
Yes, of
basically,
course.
after the march, I went to his house, became very close. And then a couple years later, I was diagnosed with cancer. And so in a sense, that's really where my story begins. And my first intuition was to call Rabbi Penny. I was very worried about what my friends were going to say to me. You know, it's so hard sharing such news. And often it makes people very uncomfortable. And it's not easy news. It was very sad news of what I had to go through. And I just trusted that he was going to say what he had to say. And I was very comforted by everything. And then afterwards, he invited me once again for Shabbos. And Shabbos was always, my lifeline. It was my healing till this day. It's something I look forward to every single week. And I went to his house for Shabbos. And this time it was in the cottage, like in St. Agatha area,
Mhm.
Trout Lake. And it was such an experience for me. There was like so many religious people, and he has a massive family, and everyone completely took me in, open arms. I was very much welcome there, and I had the most unbelievable Shabbos. And it felt like for 25 hours, it was like a true island in time. I completely turned off my phone out of respect. And Shabbos just went by so quickly. And I really enjoyed just connecting with so many different people. And it was very different from whatever I connected to before, just the language and how people saw the world. It was completely different, the things they spoke about. And I really enjoyed it. And then fast forward after that, I was basically keeping Shabbos to the extent of what I knew throughout my entire treatment. And so that's kind of how, I got introduced to Judaism and spirituality. And it was something that really saved me throughout my treatments. And
If I could say something, I feel almost like your journey really started before your diagnosis because
yes,
you always grew up with, it seems to me now that we're talking,
yes,
never assume anything, but it seems to me now that we're talking that actually it was always within you.
100%. I believe it's within
Always.
everyone, though.
You what?
I believe it's within everyone.
Okay. And we're here
There's
to
like
talk
a
about you.
godly spark within us all. I
Yeah.
think it did start before, but I
Yes.
think I started to take action.
Okay. That's, yeah. But it was in you. Like that feeling was in you.
Yeah, it was like brewing, and then I got sick, and it was like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
push to
Yeah.
make a change. Like,
Yeah.
nothing's going to change unless you make a change.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's when I really started changing and transforming my life very slowly,
Yes.
you know? And I'm still on that journey of making changes and, trying to connect even more.
So when you were diagnosed, I heard a little bit about your life before, but let's say, during your fight, right? Like during your
Mhm.
fight for cancer, how was that for you?
So if I focus on all the treatments, like the physical treatments of it all, it was very hard,
Yeah.
very, very challenging. I remember, every time going to a treatment, I was super anxious.
Yeah.
It was always very painful. I was like always like nauseous just arriving there and seeing everyone and, you know, all the blood work and all the tests that they had to do. I was never like good in those situations. And
Mhm.
so it was painful. They often couldn't find my veins.
Mhm.
And I would just like sit there, like breathing, like praying, like just find my veins already. Like it could take an hour and different nurses coming in. And like it was a very intense process.
Okay.
And, you know, there were times I wasn't even able to go to the washroom on my own because I was so weak and I was like hooked up to countless wires. And after the treatment, it hit you really hard, you know?
Mhm.
And I would often feel very sick and have all sorts of, you know, symptoms of like aches and pains and nausea and migraines, and everything just was off. Like overnight, you know, everything changed.
And so, when did you, like, from where did you draw strength to get through those times? To know that, oh, you must have moments where you're thinking, I'm gonna have to get through this. I'm gonna get through this. So
Mhm,
where did
mhm.
you draw that strength from?
So this rabbi really helped me throughout this whole journey.
Mhm.
And from the beginning, when I reached out to him, he was such a support to me.
Mhm.
And I really felt from the beginning, I feel grateful that I was able to see the hand of God throughout the entire journey. And
Mhm.
everything that was happening to me, I really felt like it was divine providence. And I felt that I was going through this for a reason. And also, just to keep in mind, I was told that I had a good prognosis. So
Okay.
even though the treatments were brutal,
Mhm.
I knew I was going to get through it.
Okay.
And I felt in my mind like I just need to get through this and I'm going to come out even stronger. And so much light came down in that moment when I was told I had cancer. You know, I was able to really put my life into perspective and focus on what's important and what's not important. And I think throughout my whole treatment, that's what gave me strength, looking forward to what's going to be, what my life is going to look like now with all this change in my life. I was excited.
Right. Like it almost gave you permission
Mhm.
to live your best life.
Exactly.
Like, why do we have to wait for that? But somehow human nature, we have to wait for that. But it,
Exactly. That's so much part of my purpose is just sharing my story with everyone so that they
yeah,
don't have to go through what I went through so that they could start living their best life and not settling for anything else.
right. And so your treatments were for how long? A year to like
No, it was about a whole year from
a
the time I
year?
was diagnosed till the time I finished. It was
Okay,
about 6 months of chemotherapy. It was done every second week.
okay,
And as well, I also had like a white treatment cells, like an injection that I had to do to boost up my white blood cells that my mother actually did. And then after that, I had like a little break to just, you know, get myself back a bit. And then I started radiation every single day for like 2 months. And I had a surgery and I had to recover from that surgery as well, to start my treatments. So yeah, I
Mm.
would say it was about a year process.
I remember those times actually.
Hmm.
I remember
Yeah.
those times for sure. And so when you started, so you were keeping Shabbat at that time.
Hmm. To the
Was there,
extent of what I knew, you know,
okay?
to the extent of what I
Yeah,
knew at that time,
yeah,
like
that's okay. Yeah,
slowly, like taking on a few things here and there.
yeah. And so when did it become, or how did you make it more in your life? Like when did you start
Mhm.
adding more? I know it was slow, but when did you really
Right.
start to get into it?
So I was learning a lot throughout the treatments. I was reading a lot of books, right? I had so much time on my hands, like 24 hours of no phone and no, you know. So I would read a lot. I would ask a lot of questions. And I also like went inwards at that time and learned a lot about myself, right?
Mhm.
But I think when it really came about was when I went to Israel. I moved to Israel when I was done my treatments. That was something I really wanted to do. I always had such a positive experience going to Israel. You know, it was a healing for me when Jackie died. And I went to Israel to study at the University of Jerusalem. Simultaneously, I was studying in a seminary, learning, and that's when I learned a lot. And I think when I was starting to connect the dots, you
Mhm.
know, realizing that, you know, there is, you know, a system in place for us, Jewish law. And every time I learned a new mitzvah, mitzvah means a commandment. And I always say, mitzvah actually means connection. So every time we do a mitzvah, we're connecting to God. And
Mhm.
so the more I learned, the more I wanted to do because I was yearning to connect so much.
Mhm.
The more I connected, the more I felt this like comfort, this like embrace from God that I was taken care of and everything was under control. And I also besides all the mitzvahs I was doing, I really enjoyed it. It's a lifestyle as well, right? Every time I blink, there's another holiday. Right now I'm preparing for Purim. I just got costumes for my kids. Then it's Passover, then it's Shavuos. Like there's always something to look forward to. You are never bored being an observant Jew. There's always something, or there's always something that needs to get done.
Yeah.
There's always someone in need, and we feel this responsibility to show up and be there for others. So it was something that just everything I learned, I was like, wow, I love this. This makes so much sense. This is so beautiful. And I tried to connect to everything I was doing and not be robotic about it, but to really internalize it, learn about it, appreciate it, and then do it.
So you were living more in alignment with who you were and what
Yes.
you were feeling.
Yeah,
So
it
it
really
makes
felt
you a
right.
happier person, right? Like when we live in
Absolutely.
alignment with who we are. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I just thought of something. How were your parents through all this change?
Yeah. So my parents were amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Um, I think also they saw the whole journey unfold,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I didn't do it overnight. And I spoke about it and I shared what I was feeling inside. They understood it all. They were kind of on this journey with me. I think there were little things that became more challenging as it became more real, which makes sense. Just for example, not being able to go to restaurants with them, which was such a big part of our life, or even like traveling, certain places wouldn't be so practical now as a religious woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like it was a little bit of an inconvenience at times for them, but I think once they like understood, they really respected me and they did whatever they can to like meet me where I'm at. They even went as far as koshering their entire kitchen for me, changing everything so that my family could eat there. And I'm so grateful because I could send my kids there. I don't need to be there and they're in good hands. Bubby's taking care of them. So I would say I had all the support I needed. Even my friends were amazing. And again, I think people understood what I experienced and then they saw that I was happy
Yeah.
and I wasn't, I never pushed it on anyone else.
Yeah.
I always shared my experience and tried to, encourage people to do whatever they felt was good for them. But I still remain the same person. I still am to this day. Like so much has changed, but really I'm that same Amanda as a little girl,
Yeah.
just elevating everything I was doing before, and making it holy as much as I possibly can.
Right. Yeah. And I wonder also about your parents, like what it brought into their life. I mean, maybe you don't, maybe it had a purpose, that
Hmm.
passion had a purpose in that too, right? Like
Sure.
the
I mean, my
passion and the
mother
fire that
definitely
we
learned
live.
about it a lot as well, right?
Yeah.
Just being like, we also like, we have guests for Shabbos all the time. You came to my house for Purim, you see like my house
Yeah.
is open, like
Yeah.
it's a revolving door. My mother's like, she lives here basically. So she experiences all the holidays with us. She comes for Shabbos. She's like up to date with what's going on. My kids come home and share stories and she's learned a lot. And she also like thinks it's so beautiful. And
Good.
I think that it has transformed their lives as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
internally,
Yeah.
because it's really a journey that goes inwards and outwards. And the outwards is the hardest part, you know,
Mhm.
because,
I mean,
you know, putting on a wig, dressing modest, that's not always so easy, right? But deep down within of like connecting to something greater than you and trusting in a God and knowing that everything's happening is for a reason and there's a greater purpose for it all takes a lot of pressure away. So I
mhm.
think it has helped turn that way. Um, and they've learned a lot. My father as well. My father's not well. My father's ill with Alzheimer's, as you know. But before he was sick, from the time I was diagnosed, actually, he went to shul every week.
Oh,
Every Shabbos he went to shul, and that was a big healing for him.
right.
And he was always very traditional, and he always
Yeah.
really connected with it, and he was very proud of me.
Yeah.
He still is proud of me. Yeah.
Yes. That's for sure. That's for sure. So I guess your passion would be about religion and
Mhm.
and I just want to also bring up actually going back to a second when you said talking about like wearing a wig and making
Mhm. Mhm.
dressing modestly and stuff. When you're living back to living in alignment, I think it's so important, when you're living in alignment, those things become so beautiful to be able
Mhm.
to do those things, no matter what kind of life you're living, no matter what changes you're making in your life, um, as long as it feels comfortable, then it's absolutely beautiful. And
Exactly.
people see that. And
Mhm.
so that light that you share, I mean, people see it everywhere that you go, and
Mhm.
so that's it's that living in alignment. I really like that. Um,
Yes.
so, you grew so passionate about religion and about, your life. It gave you that purpose. That can you talk a little bit more about that purpose that you had in your life to live in a religious, Orthodox way, and how
Mhm.
you took that purpose and moved it forward into the community? Because it's
Mhm.
always like that, right? Like it has a purpose for yourself, but then like there's always a purpose for other people, either
Absolutely.
friends and
Absolutely.
family or community. That's what this show is all about. So can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that?
So, I'm sure you're aware that there are so many different groups or different sects of Judaism,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
So I chose Chabad. That was the teachings that really resonated with me.
Okay.
Lubavitcher Rebbe, all his teachings. And he really encouraged and empowered Jewish women, all the Jewish people, to really reach out to everyone and be a light to the world, to really spread light. We live in a very dark world, especially now, right? And so I, from the get-go, felt this sense of responsibility that I received such a gift that I was looking for from a young age. And now I feel this sense of responsibility to share it with the world and to give people hope and to remind them that they have so much inner strength, because as a Jew, we have a soul, we have a neshama that is so powerful and so much inner strength and so much resilience. And so that's really like my message to the world, is to really share that and to, share as much as I possibly can about Judaism, because I think there's a lot of like misconceptions about Judaism.
Hmm.
And so really just sharing that Torah is so practical,
Hmm.
right? And I always say Torah is so romantic because I think you know this, but I'm a color teacher, which means I work with brides before they get married and talk about very intimate topics and intimacy and passion and all those exciting topics. So yeah, I always feel like when you have something, you can't just keep it to yourself. You have to share it with the world. And I
Right.
think I really believe, like I was saying earlier, that I believe that everyone is yearning for that connection.
Hmm.
Everyone's looking for something more. And I think sometimes like this pursuit of happiness is that everyone's searching for something, but it's always instant gratification, you know?
Hmm.
It feels good in the moment, but something long lasting, everyone's searching for that. And I
Hmm.
just see from the work that I do, teaching brides, and a lot of times people reach out to me, people you would never expect, these big influencers on Instagram, that it appears that they have it all together, but
Hmm.
they're looking for more in their marriage, right? Marriage is the foundation. So
Hmm.
if their marriage is rocky, every other area is affected. And often they will come to me and say, like, I don't know what it is. I just feel like it's not what it was when we first got married. And so I'm introducing them to the wisdom of the Torah when it comes to marriage. And
Hmm.
so that really is my mission and purpose. And of course, with cancer or any illness, to really support anyone going through something very difficult
Hmm.
and helping them find their inner light and their inner strength to be able to cope and go through it. Because ultimately, we know like it's inevitable that we will struggle in life.
Hmm.
There's always challenges, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. And so, again, what other how can I say this? Like what other projects are you involved with that have a big purpose in your life and
Right.
your passion?
So I also speak.
Yeah. Hmm.
Besides Zoom and podcasts and interviews, I travel the world sharing my story. And so that's a big part of my purpose. And I do different workshops. And you wanted to ask me something?
Yeah, like when you're traveling and doing these talks, what does that do for you?
So I always
Never
say,
mind everybody else. Yeah. What does it do for
exactly.
you?
I always feel when I show up there, which is never easy, being so vulnerable and sharing my story, I always know and feel the sense of responsibility to share it, because there's so much from my story that you could learn from different areas in your life. But I always gain so much traveling. First of all, keep in mind when I travel, I always mostly speak at a shul, at a synagogue. So I always meet the rabbi and rebbitzin. And usually they are so inspirational, and I learn so much from them, and being exposed to their family and being in that environment and just meeting so many different types of people. And I always say, everyone has a story. So when I become vulnerable and get up there on stage and share my story, it allows people to let their guard down. And all of a sudden, like I'm done my story and everyone's coming up to me like, oh, do you have a couple minutes? I want to share with you something happened to me. I totally relate to what you're saying. And then I learn from them,
Mhm.
and you really feel this like sense of unity. Like we're all in this together. We're all struggling. We're all searching. We're all looking for balance. We're all looking for like true inner happiness.
Mhm. And so even at the beginning when we started talking, you were saying how you're still discovering, you're still learning, you're
Of
still on a
course.
journey, you're
So much
still
work to do. So much
right,
work to do.
right.
Right? I think it's
So
also when you're,
what is it right now? Like, what have you been thinking about in the last couple of days?
oh, I'm gonna get really deep. Okay. I
That's what we're
so
here for.
Exactly. I think it's also like when you quiet down, when you
Mm,
make time for quiet, which you and I took a course together with Erica Diamond, right?
yeah.
The self-care course. So when you really slow down and you make that quiet time to like reflect and reassess your life, you're able to see so much of like what's going on internally. So I think for myself, um, making that time and seeing what's really going on, I am working on now, being a mother and showing up for my kids in the best way I possibly can. My kids are at that stage now where they really need me. And, they're like little people that have like lots of emotions, and just helping them manage that. So that's like a big priority for me. I've taken a step back from like a lot of community stuff, realizing that charity starts at home,
Right.
right? Like so many people are busy volunteering here and there, but our families need us so much. My children need me, my father needs me. So that's really my priority now, is just like learning to stay calm and be present and be there even in the difficult moments, which I experienced a lot of those with my father. Um, and just, health and wellness journey, which I know you could relate to also, just every day, just trying to be as healthy as I possibly can and doing all the things I need to do to feel my best self,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So that's a lot of my journey as well,
Hmm.
which isn't always easy.
No.
So that's a lot of what I'm working on. And just another project that I want to share is I go to Trois Rivières. So Trois Rivières is an hour and a half away from Montreal.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, the Lubavitcher Rebbe encouraged people to do a lot of outreach. So I'm sure you're aware there's Chabad houses all over the world, like over 5,000 in the craziest places you would never think. And you
Hmm.
wouldn't even know that there's Jews there. If there's one Jew, you go there for a Jew. Every Jew is a diamond.
Hmm.
And my husband and I went like a couple years ago. Our rabbi from the Montreal Tourist Center sent us out. He really felt that there was, Jews hiding there. There used to be a community there. And we kind of went there and scoped out the scene, and we found ourselves like a little community.
Hmm.
So we try and go as often as we possibly can. We go about once a month. We go for a lot of the holidays. We're actually planning now to go for Passover, to host, two Seder's there and try and bring as many people as we possibly can, and just show them a really good experience. A lot of these people are very disconnected from their Judaism, from spirituality. And so we're just there to be there for them and to introduce them to this gift.
Hmm.
So that's a big part of what me and my husband do, and my children. My children are such a big part of this mission, and yeah, that's a big
So
part of my life.
that project really fills your cup. So you might
Absolutely.
say no to other things because you need to be
Yes.
with kids, but that one you sort of hang on to because right now I think it seems to me like it's giving you a lot and really
Yeah.
filling yourself up so you can give to others,
Yeah. It's also
Yeah.
a way for me to connect with my children, right?
Right.
Like I said, they really need me, but here, like,
You do it
it's
together.
amazing. We're doing it together,
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very, very special, and they feel really good about it. And, I think it's so important from a young age to like put them in those environments and, introduce them to people that might not look like them and might not act like them and might not speak like them. And it creates like strong, children that are really resilient and are able to, you know, be exposed to that.
Yeah. Accepting, non-judgmental.
Exactly. That's all the things we're teaching them.
Yeah, that's
To
beautiful.
be sensitive to others and others' needs, and you know, to be grateful for what you have and to be there for others always, you know?
And it's like a practice, right?
Yes.
It's a
Yes.
practice. Like everything that we do is a practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
we're practicing every day. So you're practicing. So right now you're practicing. I mean, you're a practicing Jew, but
Yes,
you know, you're a practicing mom
for
also. And
sure.
right,
For
you know,
sure.
and you know, your issues with your dad, which we can talk about another time, because there's lots to
Mm-hmm.
say there that you might want to
Yes.
share, is
Yes.
you're a practicing daughter, right? Like
Yes. Yes.
I
Yeah, the roles have
don't
reversed for sure.
so we have a few minutes left, like just a
Okay.
few, but so for example, like so that's a really good, interesting thing about practicing. Like I think when
Mm-hmm.
you were younger, you were looking for something to fill that need to practice and to
Yes.
be like a, let's say, I don't even know how to say it, not a box, but like something to follow, to practice, to be that person that you
Right.
see yourself as being, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you have like just a
It
couple
felt like chaos
minutes,
before in a sense, you know?
right?
So it
And
just
so
allowed me to be more grounded. And I would say
yeah,
like Torah to me, like the Bible, it's our GPS, you know, and it
right,
really guides me to where I need to be. And there's so often we're in situations where we like don't know what we need to do. And I often just turn to that wisdom to guide me through it and to reach out to my rabbi and to my mentor. And I find that really just helps me feel like I'm doing what I need to do, like
right.
confident about my every move in a sense, you know, and like simultaneously in that move, I'm making that connection.
Yeah. And you've always been that type of person, no matter what, throughout your life, that always wanted to do better, be better,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
have that spark, that
Yes,
passion, and
yes, yes,
now you're able to express the passion
right,
clearly, put it towards something, you know,
right,
whatever that is,
absolutely,
you know, put it towards
exactly,
something. Like everyone could relate to this in a different way,
absolutely,
put it towards their something and practice that intention of being who you are supposed to be.
exactly. And I think
Right.
just like from a young age, I never knew what that something was,
Right.
you know, and it was just very overwhelming. School was overwhelming. I didn't know what I wanted to be. And like, it was just very hard. And there was so much pressure of like, I feel like from the second I was like born, it's like you're already thinking of like which, you know, daycare is she going to go to, and then which
Right.
school, and then high school. And high school, you're already thinking of CJEP, and CJEP, you're already thinking of university. And then it's like, go, go, go. And it's like you
Yeah.
never have time to just like reflect and
Yeah.
to think, like, what do I really want? You know, what do I really want? And sometimes what you really want is completely against the grain. And by the way, I'm just sharing this. I hope it's okay. I've always loved you. I really have. You know, from the second I met you, no, it's true. From the second I met you and you did my makeup, like I always felt this connection to you. Like you seemed to me to be very different than everyone else. Like in a sense, you always did go against the grain. Am I correct? Right?
I
A little
mean,
bit.
I never, I don't know. We can, you know,
A whole other
I don't
discussion.
always fit in. That's for sure.
Right,
Yeah,
right. But I'm
yeah,
saying it in a positive way. I'm
yeah,
complimenting,
yeah, yeah. I
right?
don't know. I don't know. But
I'm
yes, we always
complimenting
had a
you.
connection.
Yes. And that's like always what I loved about you. It was like,
Oh,
it just everyone always seemed to be the same to me, you know?
yeah, I don't
And it
know.
was like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. Now you caught me off guard now.
sorry.
But no, 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 that's okay. That's okay. But so yeah, you caught me off guard.
How do I get you back on guard?
Yeah. So so
What
anyhow,
other secrets do you want to know?
yeah, exactly.
I
No,
said,
I
what
think
other secrets
it's
do
I
you want?
think that you embody, just to finish this up,
Mm-hmm.
you're embodying the passion for life,
Mm-hmm.
for the light of life. And
Mm-hmm.
your purpose is to share that for yourself
Right.
and then for others, right? That's
Correct. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Just spreading light
yeah,
and making life lighter.
yeah,
Life is heavy,
yeah. Life
you
is heavy.
know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I
Wonderful.
think that's like just really my message is I think, you know, encourage everyone that's listening to just like take some quiet time and to really dig deep of like, what do I really want? If I didn't care what anyone thought, what would I actually do with my life? If I had all the money in the world or I had all the options in the world, what would I really do? And then just manifest that idea and make it happen with
Yeah,
what you have and trust that that's what you're meant to be doing. you know?
And
It's so,
give me, we have like just a couple of minutes left.
yeah,
Give me like one tool that you use to get into that state where you're, free in your mind.
yes. So I wake up early, very early.
Mhm,
I wake up around 5. The
mhm,
latest I wake up is 6,
mhm,
and that's really my quiet time before my kids wake up and that morning rush.
mhm,
And I pray and I
mhm,
do a little meditation and I journal and I think about all the things I have in my life to be grateful for. And I sit and I have a cup of coffee and it's just very quiet. And that's just my time to like, self-talk, talk to myself, get in touch with myself. And I find that's very helpful. And that like kind of gives me all my answers, like everything's revealed in those moments, like what I want to do, what I need to do. I try to be as organized as possible and I try to always have something to look forward to. Always, you know, my schedule is always full. Often people call me and say, like, oh, let's get together. I'm like embarrassed to say, like, oh, I have plans. Oh, sorry, I'm doing a podcast next week with Charlene. Like, I'm just, my mother's very much like that also. And that's such a big part of her coping with my dad is just to be busy. I often feel like when you're busy doing good things, it keeps you out of trouble, you
mhm.
know? So that's a big part of, just getting involved in good things and surrounding myself by good people and like-minded people and,
Beautiful.
just trying to connect.
We are going to continue this another time and talk
Thank
more about that. Thank you
Sounds
all
good.
for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you
And
so
we will
much.
see you
Thank
again.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.